Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Courtroom Confidential. We are on day 2 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. It's exciting stuff because we're going to get into cross-examination for the first time. And that is really where the rubber hits the road. It's one thing as a prosecutor, I know this. You put on a witness on direct, you ask them what happened next, you walk them through their police report. It's all easy peasy. But how do they hold up on cross-examination? And by the way, against some very seasoned and talented attorneys. So let's jump right in. The first witness up is Officer Stephen Saraf of the Canton Police Department. And we're getting into cross-examination right now.
This way.
Morning.
Morning, Your Honor. Mr. Allman, you're still under oath.
Sure. Yes, sure.
I got to say,
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Karen looks composed. She looks like she's
Morning,
a
Officer Saraf.
cool customer.
Is there anything that you would like to change or amend or modify about your testimony yesterday that you thought about overnight?
No.
Did you discuss your testimony with any person between the time you got off the stand yesterday and coming back to the courtroom?
No.
Officer Saraf, I want to ask you a couple of questions about something called a dispatch log. You know what a dispatch log is?
Yes.
What is a dispatch log? Can you describe to the jurors?
Just notes saying what time calls come in and sometimes a short synopsis of what happened on the call.
It's an official document generated by the Canton Police Department, correct?
That's correct.
And it's kept in the ordinary course of business?
Yes.
It's created at or near the time of the event that it's recording?
Yes.
And it's supposed to be accurate?
Yes.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
And in fact, what it has is the dispatch details of the event that's in question. Whatever officers show up, what time they show up, the order in which they show up, the location to which they're dispatched, things of that nature, correct?
Yes.
Have you looked at the dispatch log in this case?
No, I have not.
May I approach you on that?
Yes.
This has been pre-marked as Exhibit 27. Take a glance at that and tell me if you recognize that document.
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
It looks like the log in question.
Oh, okay. So that's the dispatch log for what date?
The 29th.
Do you see your name somewhere on that dispatch log?
Yes.
To the right, one of the 3 officers that was called to the scene.
Yes.
And that looks like the dispatch log for the call out that you were testifying about yesterday. Is that right?
That's correct.
May I approach you on
Yes.
that? May I publish this as we
Yes.
discuss it? That is really small font. May I approach one more time?
Yes.
This is not an eye contest.
Thought I would know.
I should say. Oh, look at that. The magic of technology. All right. You can either look up on the screen or look at the dispatch log that's in front of you. I'll try to look at the one on the screen. My eyes aren't that great either. If you look to the right, there appear to be 3 entries for the dispatch of the officers that were on the scene about which you testified yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, it has this dispatch log shows that you and then Officer Mullaney and then Sergeant Good all arrived to 32 Fairview that morning within 7 seconds of each other, correct?
That's what it says. Yes.
It actually has Officer Mullaney arriving first at 6:09:26. You see that?
Yes.
And you see that it also has 3 seconds later at 6:09:29 you arriving. Is that right?
6:29. It says. Excuse me. Yeah, 6:09. Yes.
6:09 and 29 seconds.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yep.
That's okay. And then it has Sergeant Good arriving 4 seconds after you at 6:09 and 33 seconds, correct?
Sure. Yep.
So all 3 of you, according to the official document generated by Canton Police Department for this event, has Officer Mullaney arriving first, you arriving second, Sergeant Good arriving third, all within 7 seconds of each other, correct?
Correct.
That is completely false, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you've looked at your
When you get a witness to answer the question about an official police document, that's completely false, isn't it? And he says, yes, you are already scoring points on this witness. And a couple of things I just want to point out, and I'm not going to interrupt a whole bunch during this because it's just fun to watch. But first of all, this cross-examination is prepared. They knew they were going to start out this way on this cross-examination probably weeks ago. And it had nothing to do or very little to do what he said on direct. They knew they were going to come in with this document because the prosecution did not present this document. So they're prepared on this cross-examination. I love that they're using police documents. They're using the evidence provided by the prosecution to cross-examine the prosecution's own witnesses. It shows a command of the evidence. It shows that they're not afraid of the evidence. And the other thing that's happening here is that this is what's called it's a response report. It's a radio call report. I mean, it's got different acronyms. I was trying to think of what we use here in California, but essentially all this is a log of when different dispatch cars are saying where they're going and what they're doing. And he's pointing out that it shows that they all arrived within seconds of each other, but we know, and he's going to get into likely the dash cams of when they actually did arrive. We now know that that's not true. That's not accurate. And it is what Alan Jackson, very talented attorney, is calling false. And really, end of the day, this is a small thing. This is not a huge piece of information. But the way he's doing it is making it sound like it's huge, making it sound like it's so important, and already making the police department the bad guy, which is the entire theme of the defense case. The police department are the bad guys here. And I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and disclose this up front. I know Alan very well. I've known him for 20 years. I was his law clerk in the DA's office, and I was his partner at a criminal defense firm not too long ago. And he's incredibly talented. And he's also very good about exactly this, making something that is marginally important seem like it's tremendously important to the jury. So let's continue to watch this. This is fun.
Dispatch, I'm sorry, your dash cam, correct? And clearly, we saw it yesterday. You arrive and there's nobody else on scene.
Correct.
That was at about 6:10 a.m. that you arrived, correct?
About that, yes.
And then Officer Mullaney actually arrives after you about 6:11 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
And Sergeant Good does not arrive, according to your own dash cam, until about 6:16, a little after 6:15.
Yep.
All right. So right off the bat, the official Canton Police Department dispatch log, one of the first documents generated in any investigative event, that's completely wrong, right?
The times are, yes.
Well, the times and the orders, right? I mean, not only did Officer Mullaney not arrive first, you arrived first.
That's
and
correct.
then he arrived.
Sure.
So that's two things that are wrong about just that, correct?
Sure.
And then it has Sergeant Good arriving 4 seconds after you, which is also incorrect.
Yep.
He didn't arrive until about 6 or 7 minutes after you, right?
Sure.
All right. Have you reviewed this document in the past?
Yes. No.
You've never seen the dispatch log?
No.
Did you ever seek to make sure that the dispatch log that's so important and so vital in an investigation was actually accurate before it was turned over to the defense, for instance?
No, I didn't.
The dispatch log that's so vital and important was turned over. Okay. Is it vital and important, Alan? I don't know. Yes and no, but he's doing a great job of making it sound like it's vital and important. And that's really the important thing here. And you can tell he's already kind of rattling this officer. He's already kind of getting under his skin. When somebody starts saying sure instead of yeah, that to me already signals that they're getting a little bothered, that they're not answering questions as professionally as they might. And so he's getting a little troubled by this cross-examination already.
Right. But without that dispatch log, without your dash cam, we would be relying on your dispatch log to be true and accurate. Is that right?
Other than what I'm saying, that what happened, correct.
And do you think it's accurate otherwise? Yeah.
Not in order, no. It's not. Not in order, no.
Other than
In
the
time.
order and the time that the officer's responding, is it correct in all other respects in your mind?
Can you rephrase?
Sure.
Say it one more time.
Let's take away the order and the time that the officers responded. Ignore that.
Mhm.
Is the dispatch log otherwise accurate?
Yes.
Take a look at the left-hand column where it's highlighted in green. What's that address?
Highlighting green?
On the screen, it's
I'm
highlighted.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I
I don't have the document.
That's okay. It says 32 Fairview.
Did you arrive to 32 Fairview Road?
No,
You arrived at 34 Fairview Road,
that's correct. Yep.
So that even the location on the dispatch log is faulty. Is that right?
Sure. Yep.
May I approach you on?
Yes.
I mean, again, is the location all that super important? I mean, yeah, I'm not trying to say these things are not important, but is it, 32 to 34? Are they next door to each other? I don't know. But the important thing is that he's taking a police document, a document in the purview of the prosecution, and already showing how it's rife with errors and it's a sloppy investigation. And really, the bad guys here are the police department and not my client.
Yep. You testified at a grand jury in April of 2022, correct?
I did.
At that grand jury, do you remember telling the grand jurors what address you actually responded to?
The lights, please.
Don't recall. Probably what I said.
Refresh your recollection if you took a quick glance
Sure.
at a copy of your grand jury testimony. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Officer Saraf, I've done you the favor of highlighting a page on page 9. Where did you indicate to the grand jurors that you actually
It
arrived?
says 35 Fairview.
I know what it says. I'm asking if it refreshes your recollection that you actually testified under oath that you responded to 35 Fairview.
Yes.
And that is incorrect as well, isn't it? Yes. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Death by 1,000 cuts. That's exactly what this is.
Have you reviewed any of the other officers' reports that relate to your dispatch out to the location that you've been testifying to?
No, I did not.
Did you ever review Sergeant Good's report?
No.
Are you aware that have you ever discussed with Sergeant Good that he wrote in his official report that you responded to 32 Fairview Road?
No.
And of course, we just talked about the fact that the dispatch log lists 32 Fairview Road and not 34 Fairview Road, correct?
Correct.
So none of the initial police reports, not the dispatch log, not your police report, apparently not Sergeant Good's, list 34 Fairview Road as the actual location where you responded that morning, correct?
As far as I know, yes. Yes, sir.
Was there an effort on your part or anybody else's, to your knowledge, to mask the actual address of Brian Albert's house as 34 Fairview Road?
No.
Ooh.
No.
All those are just mistakes,
Yes.
over and over and over.
Now he's slipping in the conspiracy. Are those mistakes? In other words, are you just incompetent or are you actually criminals? Are you actually conspiring? He's slipping that in now.
Yes.
When you made contact with the victim and the women that you described yesterday, did you see any evidence that any of the women had been engaged in life-saving measures?
Yes.
What did you see?
It appeared that Karen Reed was doing mouth-to-mouth on John O'Keefe.
You saw, I don't want to get too graphic, but you saw blood on her face?
Yes, I did.
You saw blood on his face?
That's correct.
You saw blood in her hair?
No, I didn't see anything.
You didn't notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
Okay. But certainly blood on her face from having engaged in some sort of CPR activity?
Yes.
Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, you said?
It looked like it, yes.
Okay. You also saw Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting with chest compressions. Is that right?
I'm not asking a question. Just
Sorry?
objection? Or just no question?
No, he can ask it. The question hasn't been asked yet. Finish the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you also see Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting in chest compressions?
I don't remember who exactly it was, but it appeared that somebody was doing
What about
arches.
the third woman, Jennifer McCabe?
They were all around the body.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe ever engage with John O'Keefe as he lay on the ground and assist in any life-saving measures? Did
I don't-
you witness that?
I don't recall.
But you do recall my client engaged.
Yes.
See, I don't think this is a small point. I actually think that's a really interesting point. I mean, she's the one charged with murder here. And she appears to be the only one really concerned about his life at this point. And she's administering CPR to the point of getting blood on her mouth and face and her hair. I mean, is that indicative of a person who just took another person's life? I do not think it's a small point.
Isn't it true that Jennifer McCabe pulled you aside while my client and Carrie Roberts stayed with John O'Keefe and began engaging you in conversation?
Yes.
And she was providing some sort of a narrative to you, correct?
Correct.
While the other two women are trying to save John O'Keefe's life, she's talking to you
For brief seconds, I would say.
for brief seconds.
Yes.
You saw that the dash cam video was those several minutes on the dash cam video where she's standing and having a conversation with you? Are those the brief seconds?
I don't know what time frame you're talking about.
Right after you got there.
Right after I got there.
Correct. Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe do anything physically to help John O'Keefe?
No, I didn't see anything.
Did Jennifer McCabe offer to you during that brief seconds that you described, this narrative that she was having, this conversation she was having with you? Did she ever offer the fact that she was standing in front of her sister's house?
No.
Did she ever offer the fact that her brother-in-law, who lives in the house, is a first responder?
Objection.
Sustained.
Interesting thing to just note here is apparently the judge has made an order that objections are not to provide the foundation for the objection. Just state the objection. The judge will decide, kind of following along and knowing what the objection likely is, whether or not to sustain it or deny it or overrule it. And I suppose if they get overruled and they still have a problem with it, they ask for a sidebar. But I've never heard a judge give that order before, and it's curious to me. It sounds like she runs a very tight ship, and this is how she likes things done. I've heard of no speaking of objections, meaning that you can go ahead and make an objection and give the grounds for it, but I don't want you to start to argue in front of the jurors the reason for it. That's a pretty standard order by the judge. But to say, I don't even want you to give the basis for it, is really unique.
Were you apprised at any time while you were out there that the homeowner was a first responder?
Objection.
Sustained.
It's funny to just hear it done that way.
Based on your observations between Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those women appeared to be more focused on trying to save John's life in the moment?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Speculation.
Between Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those two women, based on your observations, appeared to you to be more focused on physically trying to save John O'Keefe's life in the moment?
At that point, it was Karen Reed.
You would agree with me, Officer Saraf, that in any investigation, details matter, accuracy matters, correct?
Sure.
Reports are written in police investigations in order to memorialize observations, things heard, seen, experienced by the officers, correct?
Yes.
And generally speaking,
This
you're
is called the
trained
setup.
to write those reports, memorialize those observations as quickly as possible so that things are fresh in your memory.
Correct.
You don't want to write a report about an incident that you respond to today, 2 years from now.
No.
As a matter of fact, you're trained exactly the opposite. When you respond to a scene, somewhat important, you need to get it down on paper as quickly as possible for detail and accuracy, right?
Yes.
You did, in fact, write a report, a supplemental report for this investigation, where you laid out your observations of that morning, correct?
That's correct.
These are called incident reports, correct?
Yes.
I'm holding what appears to be a multi-page document that is entitled an incident report. May I approach?
Yes.
Take a look at the tabs on the page
Mhm.
and tell me if you recognize what's on that page.
I'm sorry.
Do you recognize that? All I'm asking you, do you
Oh, yes.
recognize that as your report?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you write that?
Yes, sir.
When did you write that?
I believe the morning of.
So that would be January 29th,
That's correct.
a little bit later in the morning after you left the scene.
Yes.
And you were reflecting back on what had just happened minutes or hours before, correct?
Yep.
And you were trying to be as truthful as possible, correct?
Yes.
You were trying to be as accurate as possible,
Yes.
as comprehensive as possible,
Get him.
Yes.
and as thorough as possible.
Get him, Alan.
You wrote in that report, quote, Karen Reed kept screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She was severely distraught and not able to tell me what happened. Correct?
That's correct.
There, Coach?
Yes.
There was no limit to the amount of words that you could put on the page, correct?
Nope.
Matter of fact, there's a ton of white space. It's left unutilized, right?
That's correct.
You could have taken as much time as you wanted to in writing this report. Is that right?
Sure.
And is that yes?
Yes.
There was no reason to abbreviate anything. Is that right?
No.
And you tried to be as accurate as you possibly could in that moment
Yes.
and put everything down in that report that reflected what you experienced, what you observed, and what you heard that morning, correct?
Yes.
And the only statement you attribute to my client on that morning, just hours after the incident or minutes after the incident, was she kept repeating, "Is he dead?" Right?
Yes.
You got to understand that the last few minutes of cross were all to set up that exact question. Reports are accurate. Reports are made at close in time. You have all the time in the world to write this report. You authored this report. You were intending to be as accurate as humanly possible when you wrote this report. On and on and on and on. Build up, build up, build up. All a great job. I'm not knocking him for any of it. All to get to that question was the only thing my client said was, "Is he dead? Is he dead?"
You were interviewed by Michael Proctor the next day, weren't you?
I don't know what day it was, but.
We refresh your recollection, take a look at the report.
Sure.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Take a look at that report that's dated March 15, but reflects an interview on January 30, and then tell me if you recognize it.
Looks like it's his report.
Okay, that's Trooper Proctor's report of an interview that he did with you, correct?
Yes.
And if you look on the second page, paragraph about what you stated to Trooper Proctor.
That's highlighted? Is
I
that-
highlighted for you.
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell Trooper Proctor, let me withdraw that, ask it a different way. Were you trying to be as thorough and comprehensive with Trooper Proctor as you were in your own report?
Yes.
You weren't holding anything back in that interview, correct?
No.
You wanted to be as truthful and as honest as you possibly could?
Yep.
And as comprehensive as you possibly could, correct?
Yes.
You told Trooper Proctor that you could, quote, hear Karen Reed continually state, "Is he dead?" as the paramedics treated the victim. Officer Saraf then seen Karen inside her friend's vehicle, correct?
Correct.
So the only statement you attributed to my client the day after this incident was those three words, "Is he dead?" that she continually repeated. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Fair approach?
Yes.
All right. That's been fairly well established now.
In the two times that you were
can
asked
feel it
to
coming.
reflect back on exactly what happened that morning, on January 29th and January 30th, both times you attributed only three words to my client having been repeated continually in her distraught state. "Is he dead?" Right?
Yes.
And she wasn't saying that calmly, I'm assuming.
No.
Matter of fact, you used the word she was severely distraught. Is that right?
That's correct.
When you say severely distraught, we saw part of that on your dash cam. She was emotional,
Yes.
upset,
Yes.
focused on John,
Yes.
trying to save his life,
Yes.
and asking, what was the question that she asked?
Is he dead?
Over and over and over, correct?
Correct.
Closing arguments have begun.
Then you were asked to testify in April of 2022, April 14th of 2022, at a state-run grand jury by the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Matter of fact, Mr. Lally was the fine prosecutor who was asking you the questions, correct?
Yes.
Between the time you wrote your report on January 29th and you gave a statement officially on January 30th, between that time and when you testified in April of 2022, do you have any meetings with anybody from the Massachusetts State Police?
No.
Do you have any meetings with Mr. Lally?
No.
Did Mr. Lally put you on the stand without talking to you first?
No. For this trial?
Nope. I'm just, the dates in question are up to April 14th, 2022, at grand jury.
I don't recall.
You don't recall if you met with either Mr. Lally or any of his contemporaries to discuss your potential testimony?
Not. I don't recall meeting with him for that. No. One time I met with him in his office was a couple of weeks ago with this.
In preparation for this testimony.
Correct.
But your testimony now is that he didn't meet with you or you did not connect with him to discuss your testimony before the April grand jury?
I don't recall.
When you did testify in that grand jury, you changed your story, didn't you?
No.
God, that's
You
argumentative.
testified
They're letting it
consistently
happen.
at that grand jury as you had in your report.
I testified for what I remember what happened, sir.
I see. Was your memory better in April than it was minutes or hours after the event?
Was it better?
Was it better or worse?
I don't know.
Do you think your memory gets better as time goes on?
Not usually, no.
No,
No.
usually it's the opposite, isn't it?
Yes,
And where you get foggy, you fade.
yes,
Which is why you write reports the day of the incident, if you can, correct?
yes.
Do you remember what you testified to at the grand jury in April of 2022?
The whole thing?
No,
Oh, I-
sorry, that was a bad question on my part. Just as it relates to statements attributed to my client,
Yes.
what was your exact testimony in April of 2022?
I'd have to look at my,
Would it refresh your recollection if you saw a copy of your
sure.
grand jury transcript? May I approach?
Yes.
You can just feel the tension building in that
Page 18.
room. He's doing a great job of just it's like a
Let me
roller
know what you,
coaster. Crank, 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 crank.
Would you review that and tell me if that refreshes your recollection?
Yes, it does.
In fact, on April 14th, 2022, months after this event, for the first time, you said, quote, and these are your words, tell me if I get them right. She, this is my fault. I don't know. She said, I can't believe this happened. I mean, she kept asking if he was going to die, if he's dead. And, I just basically said, we're doing the best that we could, end quote.
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
So in April of 2022, for the first time, you attributed the phrase, this is my fault. I can't believe this happened to my client, correct?
That's correct.
But nowhere.
Okay. This is great. He is doing a phenomenal job here. And I gotta stop and just kind of point out something that may go missed. Essentially, we are close to a half hour into cross-examination at this point. And he has essentially made 3 points. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that's remarkable. Essentially, we've talked about the dispatch log being inaccurate. We talked about the statements that he put in his reports initially were that she said, is he dead, as a question. And now we've gotten to the first time that he talks about her saying that she was somehow responsible was months later during grand jury testimony, and perhaps after he had already spoken to the DA in the case. And I pointed that out, that those are 3, not small. I mean, the statements that she made are not insignificant. They're hugely significant. The first one, the dispatch log, maybe not all that significant. But there's 3 points that could be made probably in 5 minutes of cross-examination, and he's taken nearly 30 minutes to do it. Now, is that all filler? 100% no. What that is remarkable buildup, remarkable laying the foundation, setting this person up. That's why I said it's like that roller coaster. You can just hear it ratcheting itself up to the height until it comes crashing down with one phenomenal question of, isn't it true that the first time you ever attributed my client to saying these words was on this date so much later? But none of that works, and none of that has the impact if you don't give it all of that buildup ahead of time that might take 10 minutes to do buildup, talking about the accuracy of reports, talking about how you keep them close in time, talking about how you wanted to be as accurate as you could, talking about how you weren't limited by the words that you could use, talking about how important it is to get those words accurate in close time, all to build up towards this idea that the first time that you ever attributed anything to my client was months later in a grand jury testimony. Because if you just do it by asking those questions and getting to it quickly, it doesn't have that impact on the jury, and it's just not going to mean as much to them. So he's taken 3 essential points here, built them up so that we're now 30 minutes into cross-examination, and he's on a roll. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. He is really on a roll and doing a phenomenal job.
In your official report, did you say that?
That's correct.
And nowhere in your interview with Trooper Proctor the next day did you say that.
That's correct.
You think that was a pretty important omission on your part?
It was an oversight.
An oversight.
Yes.
Oversight.
That a woman whom you made contact with, standing over the body of a fallen police officer, said to you, this is my fault. Just missed that one.
Yes, I missed it. I didn't write it down.
That's argumentative, but nobody stopped
And
him
of
at
course-
this point.
You testified yesterday, and your statement changed again, right?
I'm telling you, if I'm the prosecutor, I am squirming in my seat at this point. this guy, he's doing great. I mean, I got nothing against this cop. He's answering the questions well. He's not trying to be evasive, but this cross-examination is just brutal because it is making everything sound so awful. And it's just, you're squirming in your seat as a prosecutor trying to sit through this whole thing.
I don't,
Remember what you said yesterday, these jurors?
I don't, word for word.
Well, I wrote it down. Let's see
Yesterday,
this out.
buddy.
Yesterday, you said, my client said, quote, "It's all my fault. I did this," end quote.
Yes.
Remember that? But yes?
Yes, sir.
But you didn't say that at the grand jury.
No.
And you didn't say that to Trooper Proctor.
No, sir.
And you didn't put it in your report.
That's correct.
Wow.
If you were to testify in another 2 or 3 weeks, I think your statement would just keep evolving.
Objection.
Sustained.
Good on you, Alan. Get it in there anyways.
Now I want to shift gears for a second and talk about what Ms. Reed actually said that morning. You said that you reviewed your dash cam video, correct?
Once.
Do you remember when you arrived, one of the first things out of your mouth was the question, what happened?
Yes.
That would be a natural question to
Sure.
ask,
Yeah.
right? You assess the scene and assess the situation.
Absolutely.
And you would want to listen closely to what that answer was, correct?
Sure.
Ms. Reed did in fact answer you, didn't she?
I don't recall what you said.
She said, quote, "My boyfriend, I left him and he never came home," end quote. Correct?
I don't know. I don't recall.
You agree, we've already agreed, that details matter in any investigation. They
Absolutely.
certainly matter in this investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to take a look at what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 26. This is about the 3:50 runtime. I'm not looking at the actual I'm not looking at the actual time of day. Over here, I'm looking at the runtime, which is down at the bottom. So if Mr. Bates, you can put this up. Pause it. Just to orient everybody, does this appear to be your dash cam?
Yes, sir.
Same dash cam you were looking at yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and play this, Bates. Pause it. Officer Saraf, just like it's not an eye exam, it's not a hearing exam either. I'm going to do the best I can to raise the volume. And Officer Saraf, I want to focus your attention, if you wouldn't mind, on 9 seconds after you say what happened. Just count in your head and listen very, very carefully to the woman's voice that responds to what she says. Go ahead. Very, very hard to hear. Have you listened to that before?
No.
Does it appear to you that she said, "My boyfriend, I left him and he never came home"?
I couldn't understand anything.
Okay.
What's great about that is that the officer said, I can't hear it. And if you're the prosecution, I would have objected to this. I'm actually a little surprised at how much they're sitting on their hands during this direct cross-examination, that they're not objecting to what are obviously some pretty argumentative questions. And I'm not faulting Alan. I applaud him. Get away. That's a great thing about being a defense attorney, is you just go as far as you can get away with it. Obviously not being unethical, but he's not here. But this offering his interpretation of what the audio is should have been objected to. If I was the prosecution, I would have said, whoa, we're not letting counsel testify. But now that he's interjected that, what do you think the jurors are going to hear every time they hear that? Now that he's offered that, they're going, your ear is naturally going to hear their interpretation of what is being said there every single time this video plays. And so regardless of the answer, the testimony, the evidence was the question in this case.
Let's replay it one more time. Turn the volume on one more time right at that moment. Listen for a woman's voice just under. Sorry, I was asking Officer Saraf, please listen to, there's a din of noise, obviously, road noise, wind noise, etc. It's your dash cam, the audio from your dash cam. Once you close the door, listen very carefully, about 9 seconds after you say what happened, for a woman's voice, and see if you can make out what that voice says. Sure. Stop. Did you hear? I left him and he never came home.
I couldn't understand what I was saying.
You couldn't understand that?
No.
Do you want to hear it one more time?
No,
I don't think it.
no. Turn the lights on, please.
The judge is done. We're moving on.
Now, if my client had said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home, would that be something that you would find important to put in your report?
Objection.
Sustained.
That was a great
Let's move
question, though.
to another area of the dash cam video.
I really wish he had that one
I'm gonna
back.
keep playing it at the 28-minute mark, 28-minute and 20-second mark or so.
So can I see counsel sidebar for just a minute, please?
That question, the reason why I'm saying it's so important is if the answer has got to be obviously yes. If the answer is yes, he's never going to say no. Was it important to include something like that in my report? He's never going to say no. He's going to say yes. They objected to it because it's calling for a hypothetical. But if he doesn't say, if he doesn't say yes, he loses all credibility. He says yes, and then the argument is naturally, well, wouldn't it also be important to include something like her saying it's all my fault? But you didn't include that. The natural conclusion being because she didn't say it. What you did include, because you always include things that are important, is he dead? And that's it, because that's the only thing she said.
Do you recognize your dash cam video being on the left of the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you looked at Sergeant Good's dash cam video, which is squared up on the right side of the screen?
No.
You've never seen it?
No.
Okay. Does it appear to you that these are two different perspectives of the same scene? In other words, you see the car or the SUV on the left side of the screen right here, correct?
Yes, sir.
See that same SUV right there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that appear to be two different perspectives, two different angles?
Yes.
Of basically the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to the individuals to the left of the SUV right here. There's a person wearing a hood with fur on it. Is that Kerry Roberts? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Okay. There appears to be another person with a darker jacket standing just in front of that person with the hood and fur. You see
I
that
love
person?
that pointer he's got.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to focus on the person in the darker jacket.
Sure.
I believe, and the only reason I'm asking you to focus at this point is because I want to try to play this just once and see if you recognize what's depicted in the video.
Sure.
What I expect you may see is this person move out of sight behind the SUV, and then in the background, there's an SUV parked in the driveway. Pay special attention to that portion of the SUV and see if you see that person in the dark jacket pass from right to left in front of that SUV as if they're going to the house. Let's go ahead and play it. Go ahead and pause it. Have you seen the person in the dark jacket leave the view?
Yes.
Did she appear to go behind the SUV?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and play it. Go ahead and stop there. And now I'm going to ask to draw your attention to that car with snow on it. Pay special attention to that car. as the film continues to run.
He doesn't care if this officer's paying attention. He wants the jury paying attention.
Pause. Do you see a person standing in front of the car?
It appears to be a person. Yes.
Walking from right to left?
Yes.
Would that be toward the house?
Yes, it would be.
Okay. And also, if you wouldn't mind switching your perspective, now you're looking more at the front of the house. Continue watching the film and see if you see that same person walking toward the house. Okay, stop. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see. Oh, yeah. Yes. I saw the shadow. Yes.
Right. Shadow of a person
Yes.
walking toward the front of the house. That was Jennifer McCabe going into the house, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Was it a person going into the house?
It was a person. Yes.
Did you give anybody any permission to go into the house?
No, not my.
Would you think that a witness in a homicide scene, we can go ahead and raise the lights, thank you. Would you think that a witness at a homicide scene being allowed to go into a house to make contact with other witnesses?
I didn't know it was a homicide scene, sir.
If I could finish my question. Do you think it's appropriate for a witness at a potential homicide scene, an unconscious person scene, whatever crime scene,
Yes.
to make contact with other witnesses and begin discussing the situation unsupervised?
Can you rephrase that question, sir?
Do you think that's an appropriate thing to have happen?
I have no answer for that, sir. I don't know what you'd be asking.
Officer Saraf, when you go to a crime scene,
Yes, sir.
one of the first things that you want to do is secure the scene and separate witnesses so that interviews could be conducted, correct?
Sure.
You wouldn't want witnesses just cavorting together and getting their story straight, right?
Correct.
You'd want to avoid that at all costs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And why is that?
So they can't collaborate their story.
Yet there's
Holy crap. The best part of this cross-examination so far just got volunteered by the officer testifying so they don't collaborate and get their stories together. And there it is, folks. And there it is. There's somebody going into the house to collaborate and get their stories together. That played out. He could not have asked for that to have played out any better for him.
a person walking from the area where a body was found in the lawn of a house, walking into the house to make contact with other individuals, correct?
It appeared that way, yes, sir.
Does that seem appropriate to you?
No.
Of course not.
God, he's just smashing him into the floor. No mercy at that point. He sees
We
blood.
talked a bit about what you did and didn't hear at the scene from my client. At any point when you were at that location, did you hear my client repeating the phrase, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
She said, I hit him? No, I didn't hear that part.
You never heard her whisper it, yell it, say it, or otherwise.
Not that I recall.
If you had heard that statement, you likely would have written it down, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You likely would have reported that to Trooper Proctor the next day, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You likely would have mentioned it in your grand jury testimony, correct?
Yes.
And you did none of those things because you did not hear that statement, correct?
I did not hear that. No.
Sir, you were at 34 Fairview for more than an hour before you cleared the scene, right?
Yes, sir.
You were at the location of the body of John O'Keefe.
Yes.
In other words, you just didn't stay in your cruiser. You walked out to where John O'Keefe was.
No, I was in my cruiser at different times.
Must have been a bad question.
Okay.
You didn't just stay in your cruiser. At points, you got out of your cruiser, walked over, made contact with the women, and you were standing next to the body.
Yes.
And you were obviously looking around. You noticed some footprints,
Yes.
and you even noticed some lack of footprints.
That's correct.
So you were being observant at the area of the body
Yes.
and the area adjacent to the body.
Yes.
You were looking for anything that might have been out of place,
Yes.
anything of any evidentiary value, correct?
Yes.
You never saw or otherwise observed, located a single piece of taillight material, did you?
No.
You certainly didn't see 45 pieces of broken plastic or taillight material, did you?
No.
You never located or otherwise observed John O'Keefe's missing shoe
No.
or any other clothing of his?
I didn't. No.
Officer Saraf, did you ever think to look inside the house
No.
for that missing shoe?
No.
That never
Wow.
crossed your mind?
No.
You think that might have been a smart thing to do at the time?
Objection, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
Sure. Do you think that would have been appropriate protocol when dealing with a body laying on a lawn that is partially unclothed to look inside the house of the lawn?
No.
You didn't think that would have been an appropriate protocol
No.
for you or anybody else?
See, that's one of those questions where he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. I mean, the way he laid that out, would that have been appropriate protocol to look for missing clothing, the missing shoe of a dead man inside of the house of where the dead man was found? And now you've got an officer saying, no, that would not have been appropriate. Well, of course it would have been appropriate. Now he's going to have to go back and explain it. And on redirect, they're going to try to clear it up and say, well, the reason why he's phrased it that way, that it wasn't appropriate, is because he didn't consider it a crime scene and the house wasn't considered a crime scene. So they're not going to go be looking in everybody else's house. Why would they be looking in that house? I get it. I get it that it's all the damage has already been done. But if he answers that question, would it have been appropriate? And he says, yes, but you didn't do that, did you, sir? So it's a perfect question because there's no good answer for that officer unless he's allowed to explain himself, which, by the way, Alan is not going to allow him to do.
No.
Obviously, you did not conduct a search of that house, did you?
Nope.
And you're aware that to this day, no law enforcement officer ever conducted a search of that house.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, just a moment.
Yes.
No further questions, Joe. Thank you.
Anything, Mr. Lally? Okay.
Well done. Well done, AJ. I mean, that's about as clean as it's going to get on a cross-examination. Again, he really only made about a half a dozen points there over that, 45 minutes or so cross-examination, but those points were lightning, razor sharp in being able to make those points. And he set them up really, really well. As you can tell, I'm a fan. I think he does a phenomenal job. When I worked with him, I learned a lot from him. So he's really, thriving in this environment right now. All right, we're going to skip to the cross-examination of Officer Stephen Mullaney. He's also a Canton police officer. Let's see how he holds up in these circumstances.
If I may have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
And officer, you can. Thanks. I have no further questions to this witness, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Ron.
No, now we got Yannetti. Let's see how Yannetti does.
Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
Officer Mullaney, you and I have never met before, correct?
Correct.
We've never spoken about this case?
No.
Is it fair to say that when you were dispatched to 34 Fairview Road on January 29th of 2022, you were a part-time officer at that point?
No, it's full-time.
When did you start at the Canton Police Department?
July 2020.
Did you start as a part-time officer?
I did.
Oh, I see. I misunderstood your testimony. You actually became full-time in August of 2021.
Correct, sir. Yes.
All right. So you had been full-time at that point for about 6 months when you received this call, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's fair to say that you were the junior officer on scene?
Yes, it is.
You had testified that you approached Fairview from the Cedar Crest side, correct?
Yes.
34 Fairview Road is much closer to the Cedar Crest side than it is to the Chapman side, correct? And when you take a left on Cedar Crest to enter Fairview Road, 34 Fairview is the second house on the right. Does that make sense?
From Cedar Crest? Yes.
Yes. And you were quickly surmising that whatever action was taking place there was taking place on the front lawn of 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes, sir.
And one of the first things that you saw was there appeared to be a woman giving CPR to somebody on the ground.
Yeah, yes.
You didn't know who that woman was at the time, correct?
No, sir.
But you later learned her identity.
Yes, I don't recall which female it was that was given CPR though.
Okay. So you don't recall that it was Karen Reed who was giving CPR to John O'Keefe?
I don't know who it was.
At some point in time, you came in contact with Karen Reed, correct, while you were on scene?
Not direct contact, but I was on scene when she was there.
I mean, you were there until about 8 a.m., correct?
Yes.
And you were dispatched shortly after 6 a.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
You were there for approximately 2 hours, correct?
Yes.
You were there when Karen Reed was there when you showed up, correct?
Yes.
She left and she came back to the scene, correct?
Yes.
And you were there when she came back, correct?
Yes, sir.
So with regard to your contact with her, she certainly was within eyeshot, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you actually at some points were closer to her than you are to me right now, correct?
Yeah.
How close did you get to her?
10 feet.
All right. With the court's permission, I'd like to walk toward you and have you stop me when I'm at the point when you were at your
Great.
closest to Karen Reed. What can I do that, Your Honor?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
I love this. I loved courtroom demonstrations I'm on both sides of the courtroom. A demonstration is fantastic because it brings the whole scene alive for the jury. I mean, when I was a prosecutor, if ever there was a description of how was, the defendant attacking the victim, I'm popping that witness off of the stand and I'm saying, show the jury on me. He had his hands where, he put his fist where did the knife go in? Where was the gun being held? All of that stuff brings it so alive. The other thing that it does is it shows this kind of casual command of the courtroom. You're comfortable here. I own this space. I'm going to ask you to come out of the stand. I'm going to approach you. You tell me where to stop. Let's get some measurements. Let's help the jurors really understand the dynamics of how this all played out. Again, are we talking big points here? No, but they sound like big points when you play them out this way as they're doing.
Right there.
Okay. And when you were this close to her, and you're estimating this to be about 10 feet, correct?
Sure.
When you were this close to her, was there anything blocking your view of her face?
Not that I recall.
All right. You noticed, obviously, that she had blood on her face, correct?
I did not notice that. No.
You didn't notice that she had blood in her hair.
I did not notice that.
You did notice that she was absolutely hysterical.
Yes.
She was completely distraught.
Yes.
She appeared to be in shock.
Yes.
These should all be objected to, but good on him for asking them. And keep
there
going,
was
buddy.
a contrast between that demeanor that you observed with regard to Karen Reed and the demeanor of one of the other women on scene, Jennifer McCabe. Was there not?
Can you kind of explain further?
Sure. Karen Reed was screaming, correct?
Yes.
She was yelling, correct?
Yes.
She was hysterical and distraught, correct?
Yes.
Jennifer McCabe was not.
Correct.
And you actually had more contact, direct contact with Jennifer McCabe that morning, correct?
Yes.
And
I'm telling you, the prosecutors got to get into the game here. I mean, they're allowing these questions. The defense is going to do what they're allowed to do, and they should. That's important. They should. That's their job. Zealous advocacy. And if that means going up to and looking over the edge of questionable or objectionable questions, go ahead and do that. And it's up to the prosecution to be stopping this. It's argumentative stuff. It's calling for speculation. It's asking people to put themselves in the minds of other people to assess how they're reacting. How does he know how people react when they're shocked or when they're distressed or when he can say she was crying. I saw visible crying. She appeared to be upset. I didn't see the other person crying, but you're just allowing this is testimony of the defense attorney being presented through the answers of the witness. And again, I applaud it. Good on the defense for doing it. But the prosecution's just sitting on their hands at this point, and I don't get it.
you spoke to Jennifer McCabe for a good 2 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Face to face.
Yes, sir.
You were closer to Jennifer McCabe than you ever got to Karen Reed, correct?
Yes.
You were able to observe her demeanor.
Yes.
You were able to hear her tone of voice.
Yes.
You were able to hear how loudly she was speaking, correct?
Yes.
You were able to hear how quickly she was speaking.
Yes.
During those 2 minutes that you were face to face closer to Jennifer McCabe, she was not screaming, correct?
Correct.
She was not yelling.
Correct.
She was not hysterical.
Correct.
She was not distraught.
Yes.
She was calm.
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it, but let's move on.
A bit late, buddy.
Jennifer McCabe didn't have any blood on her face, correct?
No.
And you didn't see any blood in Jennifer McCabe's hair, correct?
No.
Now, with regard to what you heard Karen Reed scream that morning, I just want to make sure I get your testimony correct. I believe on direct examination, you stated that she kept repeating two phrases, one being, "Is he dead?" and the second being, "That's my boyfriend," correct?
Yes.
And how many times do you think that she repeated those two phrases?
It's quite a bit, more than 10.
Okay, like almost too many times to count, really.
Yeah, yes, sir.
And each time she said, "Is he dead?" what was her tone of voice?
Screaming very loudly.
Each time she said, "Is that my boyfriend?" what was her tone of voice?
Same.
And you got there not long after Officer Saraf, correct?
Correct.
In any of during the time, let me strike that, during the time that you were on scene and you heard Karen Reed screaming and yelling in this distraught and hysterical manner, you never once heard her say, "I did it," correct?
I did not.
You never once heard her say, "It's my fault," correct?
I did not.
You never once heard her say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," correct?
I did not.
If you had heard any of those statements, you would have recognized that those would have been important to note, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you would have noted those in your police report, obviously, correct?
Yes.
Because you know that when you are drafting a police report, you want to include all the important details, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right?
And you want to be precise and accurate, correct?
That's your
Yes.
job, right?
And so you didn't put those statements in your report because you never heard those statements come out of Karen Reed's mouth.
Yes, sir.
Now, while you were on scene,
He should have stopped there. It
at
was
some
great.
point in time, you were asked to participate in a search for evidence on that front lawn, were you not?
I was standing by. I didn't directly search for anything that I recall.
All right, and when you say you were standing by the area where John O'Keefe's body had been,
Yes.
correct? And how close were you to that area?
I was like right off the curb at that point on the street,
How many feet from from where the body had been?
10 to 12 feet.
Okay,
15 feet.
so maybe about the same distance as when I walked toward you, around that distance?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And how much time did you spend around that distance from where John O'Keefe's body had been?
I don't recall.
You were there for 2 hours, correct?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that you were sort of in and around that area multiple times during that 2 hours?
Yes.
Did you ever see anybody put up any crime scene tape at all?
I don't recall that.
You recall other officers sort of searching that area, correct?
Yes.
And while you were near that area, you were certainly paying attention to it, correct?
Yes.
Did you see officers use any equipment to clear some of the snow in that area?
Yes, sir.
What did you see?
There's a leaf blower.
Where did that leaf blower come from?
I don't know.
Who had the leaf blower?
I believe it was Lieutenant Gallagher.
When did Lieutenant Gallagher arrive on scene?
45 minutes after I did, approximately. I don't recall the exact time.
And how big was that leaf blower?
Not too big. It was
Was it handheld or was it something that you pushed?
handheld.
And who used the leaf blower?
Lieutenant Gallagher,
At what area or on what area did he use that leaf blower?
the front lawn.
And would that have been around the area where John O'Keefe's body had been?
Yes.
And you were watching him as he did that?
Oh my God. This is the first time I'm hearing this. You've got a crime scene where the collection of evidence, which by the way, some of it has been described as microscopic, is being collected. And not only do you not have it sectioned off, but you're using a leaf blower to clear away snow. I mean, how in the world is that possibly preserving things for a potential crime scene? It's not just what's found, it's where it was found. And if you're blowing everything all to hell all over the crime scene, how can you possibly piece together where things are being found? This is remarkable.
Correct?
Yes.
What other officers were in that area sort of watching what was going on or participating in the search for what was going on?
I don't necessarily recall where everybody was, but I believe it would be Sergeant Lank and Sergeant Good.
And they were superior officers, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that these brother officers of yours were looking for evidence, right?
Yes.
They were looking for clues about potentially what had happened to John O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
And you were paying attention too as they were doing their work, correct?
Yes.
You were looking for anything that might have been out of place, correct?
Yes.
If there was something large there that didn't appear to, be appropriate for a front lawn, you would have made note of that, correct?
Yes.
And if there was something small there, you would have still made note of that if it didn't appear to belong on a front lawn, correct?
Yes.
At any point in time, either before or after the leaf blower was taken out by Lieutenant Gallagher, did you see 45 pieces of bright red, black, and clear plastic pieces scattered all over the scene?
I did not.
Did you find even or see even one piece of broken plastic?
I did not.
Now, when you came to the scene, John O'Keefe was still lying on the ground, correct?
Yes.
Did you see whether or not there were any blankets on scene?
No.
Did you know that one of the women on scene had a sister who lived in that very house?
I did not.
When you were speaking with Jennifer McCabe, at any point, did you learn whether she had actually gone into that house at all?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe approach that house at any point when you were on scene?
No.
Were you alerted at any point by anyone that she went into that house while you were on scene?
No.
Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe come out of that house with blankets or anything else that might comfort John O'Keefe?
No.
What was your state of mind regarding whether there were any first responders in that house?
Wasn't aware of that.
Nobody told you?
No.
You had testified that at one point you saw Karen Reed being escorted into a motor vehicle,
Yes.
and that was one of the women on scene, her motor vehicle?
Yes, it was either that or a cruiser.
All right.
Both kind of the same area.
But you'll agree with me, at no point in time did you see Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe in a vehicle together.
Not that I recall, no.
And at no point in time did you ever hear Karen Reed ask Jennifer McCabe to Google anything?
No.
I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you, officer.
Again, just a really masterful way of conducting that cross-examination. And I'm not saying I'm deciding this case based upon these cross-examinations, but they're obviously seasoned, prepared attorneys, and they're doing this. This is not cross-examination done on the fly. This isn't then just going off of their notes from direct and coming up with a few questions. This is stuff that they had prepared weeks in advance. They knew exactly how they were going to address each one of these witnesses. And really, he spent the last, 15 minutes or so during cross, 20 minutes or so, establishing 3 important points and making sure that he built those up so that they had the proper impact with the jury. But he's basically said she was distraught and nobody else was. Here's exactly what you heard her say, and you never heard her say anything else. And that crime scene was an absolute mess, and you never saw any pieces of plastic, and they're using this leaf blower all over your crime scene. They're doing a good job. They're presenting, they're going back to their themes. They're making the police department the bad guy. They're making them the villain. They're going back to a rush to judgment. They're reestablishing and interweaving all of their themes throughout all of this. They could not be asking for these witnesses to be going any better for them at this point. All right, let's skip ahead then finally to our last witness. This is going to be right here. And this is Timothy Nuttall, who is a Canton firefighter and paramedic.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Afternoon, Firefighter Nuttall.
Sir, how are you?
You were coming, I want to make sure I get the timing right. You were coming off of nearly a 24-hour shift when you got the call,
No, sir. I was reporting for duty that morning.
just starting the shift when you got the call. Understood. I want to ask one quick question that you mentioned just a couple of seconds ago under questioning by Mr. Lally. With regard to the clothing, the normal protocol for clothing that's removed from a patient.
Yes.
You said it's oftentimes just sort of discarded onto the floor.
In terms of in the ambulance or at the hospital?
Either one.
Yes.
Okay, both?
So typically, when we remove clothing in the back of the ambulance, it's generally done with trauma shears. So we will expose and then kind of fold over. That clothing is then usually left in place. We'll do a quick roll just to check the back of the patient, and then he's usually rolled back if there's nothing found, and it's typically left there. In terms of like big puffy jackets, if you cut a puffy jacket, it just makes quite the mess. So yeah, exactly. It's a disaster. So typically those bigger jackets are just removed, and that is when we removed that type of article of clothing, that's when we noticed that his hands were quite rigid.
So that's what happened in this case.
Correct.
You removed the big heavy jacket, discarded it, got it away from the body so you could better assess the injuries.
Correct.
And it was only then, after you removed this big heavy winter coat, that you could assess that his hands were stiff and cold.
We noted the hands, but it came more into light, if you will, when we removed that coat.
Got it. And you have as good a memory about that as you do the rest of the scene that morning.
In terms of removing the article of clothing?
Correct.
I did not remove any article of clothing. I was ventilating.
But you remember him having the big jacket on.
Correct.
Okay. And you remember that as well as you remember the other specifics of the incident.
Yes.
Okay. When responding to a scene, I want to dovetail on the same subject, but just come at it in a little bit different way if you indulge me. When responding to a scene, one of your jobs has to be to sort of immediately take note of and assess the situation of the patient that you're dealing with, correct? A motorcycle accident is going to be very different than a drowning.
Exactly.
Someone in this case exposed in a snowbank, you're going to deal with or assess and note the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
You're also going to note and assess the condition of the patient.
Correct.
As it pertains to the weather.
Yes.
So someone, for instance, that's in a snowbank naked,
mm-hmm.
no clothes on at all, is going to be a little bit different assessment than someone who's completely dressed for winter, correct?
The initial assessment with every patient is going to be automatically circulation, airway, breathing.
Understood.
We approached this individual the exact same way. Is automatically went directly to cardiac. Make sure.
I guess what I'm asking.
You'll see that he's already got a different way of approaching this witness because this guy is not part of the bad guy team, right? This guy is a firefighter, so he's not a police officer. There's no reason to be adverse to him. He's not part of this overall conspiracy. At least that, to me, is the tenor that I'm getting from his testimony so far and the way that he's approaching him. So let's see if that continues.
Your attention is focused on some of those details for sure.
Correct.
And that's how you remember that big heavy coat that he was wearing, correct?
I remember he was appropriately dressed. Correct.
Okay. As a matter of fact, you testified to that in the grand jury that, quote unquote, he had a heavy coat on.
Yes.
Consistent with how you're testifying today. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Your Honor, I'd like to mark 2 photographs as next in order. Not yet been marked. I believe it would be 160.
It doesn't matter so much the number, but why don't you just show the prosecutor the photos?
161 and 162 in order. May I approach?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you, first of all, whether you recognize what's depicted in those photos.
Honestly, sir, I couldn't recall the exact, but yeah.
You do recognize them?
Yes.
Does that appear to be what John O'Keefe was wearing when you found him?
I don't recall, sir, to be perfectly honest.
May I approach him?
Yes.
Do you recall this being part of, let me ask you a different way. Do you remember somebody cutting this off of John O'Keefe at the time?
I remember the clothing being removed.
Okay, but you don't remember this clothing?
I could say that he had clothing removed, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it was.
And you just looked at these. This, what I'm holding in my hand, appears to be the front and back of a.
So don't hold it up to him from that distance where he said he doesn't recognize it. You can put it back in front of him. Don't hold it up for the jury, please.
May I?
Yes.
That appeared to be a thin cotton hoodie.
Yeah, that appears to be a thinner layer of clothing.
Okay. May I approach?
Yes.
Not a heavy coat. Is that fair?
Fair.
Not a winter jacket.
Fair.
Is it fair to say you had a lot on your mind when you were out at that scene, correct?
In terms of just
Saving a man's life.
correct.
That's your credentials are impressive. You were there focused on one thing, and that is trying to make sure that a man did not die.
Correct.
Would you agree that that was your primary concern and your primary focus the entire time you were at the scene?
Correct.
You weren't necessarily worried about what other individuals were doing, correct?
No.
If I asked you right now off the top of your head, tell me exactly the number of law enforcement officers that were there at the scene, probably couldn't tell me, could you?
No.
If I asked you whether or not you remember every single civilian that was at the scene, probably couldn't tell me, correct?
Outside of the three?
Outside of the three,
Correct.
any other civilians?
Not that I noted.
Okay. Matter of fact, you can't even identify the three civilians other than generally middle-aged, 40s, Caucasian, female.
Correct.
You said all three of them sort of look alike, right?
Without the only defining feature on one of the individuals was one of the individuals did have blood on their face.
So some of the specifics of that scene, you didn't pay special note to, correct?
No, we were focused on patient care.
Is it fair to say that, specifically as it pertains to what the victim was wearing, your memory might be a little faulty where that's concerned?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, nothing wrong with that. You were focused on something completely different.
Correct.
You did notice certain injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's person, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated on direct examination that once you got him into the back of the ambulance, you, as you put it, you had a quote unquote much better picture of what you were dealing with. Is that right?
Correct.
You testified at the grand jury that you noted that once he was in the back of the ambulance, under better lighting, you were able to tell that he had trauma to the right side of his head.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Are you talking about the major trauma that he suffered to the back of his head or the egg that you earlier described?
I was more just because it was directly in front of me. It was on the front side of his head.
Okay. So it wasn't the right side of his head. If you said right side of your head, you might point above your ear, right?
Correct,
That's not
yes.
what you're talking about.
I was, and if, to use my person, I would say right here. So more towards the right, above his right eye.
Right of center, but still on the front of his head.
Correct.
And you did not make any note of another injury on the back of his head.
No.
You talked about the injuries to the right side of his arm, correct?
Correct.
You noted that those injuries appeared to be scratches.
Yes.
That's your word, not mine, right?
Correct.
Here we go.
You didn't say that those were blunt force trauma. You didn't say that they were abrasions.
Scratches and abrasions, in my point of view, seem to go hand in hand.
But the word that you used was scratches.
Yes, they were like furrows down.
Say that again?
Furrows, if you will, for lack of a better term. Just
I don't understand that word.
so if you remove something,
Yes.
like you create a furrow in the skin. Is that?
Furrows.
Yes, there you go. Sorry, excuse my accent.
No. I'm on your turf.
Fair enough.
It's my accent. I'm so sorry. Boy, that one. It's going to be a meme somewhere.
Hey, my cousin Vinny.
Yeah, got it. All right. So when you said furrows, you made your hand.
You know what? There's something to be said for creating a little bit of a humor in the courtroom, and you got people laughing and you're becoming likable, and you're not just this slick, high-priced defense attorney, and you're creating a rapport with the witnesses, and you're creating a rapport with the jurors by them just being in the room. Something to be said for it.
And then almost like a claw and drag it against your right biceps.
Objection.
Sustained.
Can you repeat the movement that you did for the jurors and you said furrows?
Objection.
Sustained. Just move on to the next question, please.
I don't know why they're objecting to that.
You would agree that a very common cause of a hematoma over one's eye is being hit or punched.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
You said that Mr. O'Keefe did have such a hematoma over his right eye, correct?
Yes.
Did you also see a laceration under the eyebrow but above the lid on his right eye?
I don't recall.
Did you see a laceration on Mr. O'Keefe's nose?
I don't recall.
You did note that there was some blood on his nose, correct?
Correct.
That possibly that came from a small laceration.
Yes.
In your experience, well, let me ask another question. Did it look like he had, in addition to the egg on the right side of his head,
Mhm.
in the front, did it also have a black eye on the left side?
If memory serves correct, yes.
So both eyes were blackened.
Primarily the right side, if memory serves.
Okay. And the laceration toward the right side
Yes.
of the right eye. Are those injuries that you just described consistent or inconsistent with some sort of physical altercation?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Next question, please.
Yeah, she
Did
knows
it appear to
trying to
you,
go with this.
just from your initial assessment, given your experience, training, and background, that those injuries look like he had been in a fight?
Objection.
I'll see counsel at sidebar.
Okay. I mean, he's, again, try to get away with what you can try to get away with. But what he's trying to do here is shoehorn this paramedic who's a first responder. He's not a forensic specialist. He's not the medical examiner. It's not his opinion and his place really to decide what I can say caused certain injuries. He can just describe things as he sees them, and he doesn't have the training or experience to really go much farther than calling them a scratch, calling them an abrasion. Obviously, with these furrows, this word that he's now offered, it's helpful to the defense because they're trying to say, well, and that's why he was asking him to describe how it was done, because the gesture that he used to describe it looks as if it's a scratch, which they're going to try to say was a dog scratch. And that's where they're going with all of these injuries here. So he's trying to see if he cannot get him to start to testify as to not just what the injuries were, but are they consistent with being caused by a fight, being caused by a dog, being caused by, I mean, if he was allowed to go as far as, are they consistent with him being dragged inside of the house, beaten to death, and then left outside in the cold? He's going to go ahead and ask that question. That's where he's trying to go with all of that.
Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. LaBrake. In your experience as obviously a training firefighter, tell me the word again that you used.
Field training officer or preceptor.
Thank you. As a field training officer, have you seen in your experience the product or the injuries that can be produced from fistfights?
Yes.
Okay. Injuries to.
So this is what happened. We didn't hear it, but I can tell you what happened in the sidebar is they said he doesn't have the expertise to testify to this, which was what we were just talking about. And Alan said, let me lay the foundation. Let me see if I can't get out through his experience and having seen people who have had injuries from fights before. And if he thinks like he's able to identify things that are consistent with that. And if these injuries were consistent with that. So the judge said, fine, I'll let you try to establish the foundation to ask those ultimate questions, which he's more concerned with.
To the face.
Yes.
Injuries to the mouth. Injuries to the nose.
Yes.
The ears.
Yep.
To the eyes. Defensive wounds on the hands.
Yes.
Did you note we've already talked about, and I don't want to go over all this again. You've already noted what the injuries to the face were that you saw Mr. O'Keefe having suffered.
Yes.
Were those consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation?
I couldn't say.
Were they consistent or inconsistent with being in a fight?
I couldn't say.
Was that egg over his right eye consistent or inconsistent with him having been punched or hit?
I couldn't say.
I thought you said that one of the common causes of an egg like that, a hematoma, as you put it, over someone's eye, is being hit or punched.
There's quite a few reasons that somebody could get an egg, such as that over their head. I mean, you could get hit with a golf ball,
Of course.
for instance.
I'm not asking you to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, is it consistent?
It's consistent. It could be.
Okay. And the other.
So that's the clever way he's asking these questions is, and you'll see this whenever they're asking a question of an expert, is you're asking, is it consistent with? Meaning, I don't want you to tell me that injury was caused by a fist hitting his head. I want you to tell me that, is it consistent with it? Meaning, is there something about that injury that would lead you to believe it could not have been caused by somebody punching him in the head? But is that injury consistent with, could it have been caused by somebody punching him in the head? Now, it could have been caused by anything else. That's not the point. You're not trying to establish what exactly did it. You're trying to say that, is it consistent? In other words, are you able to exclude a fist having caused that injury? And if you're not able to exclude it, then you're saying it's consistent. And he asked a line of questions where the guy said, I can't really tell, but now he's got him to have a come to Jesus moment and realize that he can say that it's consistent. And this is where these questions are really beginning to take off as far as their importance for the defense.
Injuries as well.
Correct.
Okay. Did you see bruising to the back of one or both of his hands?
His hands were, as stated, they were very cold and very white. They were not well perfused. And when you don't have adequate perfusion, swelling and smaller injuries don't typically present themselves, if you will.
So you may not have seen it.
Correct.
The bruising may have been there.
It might have been there. It just wasn't observable just due to the condition of his hands.
Just maybe overlooked.
Yes.
Okay. You indicated that you were not present when your colleague, Katie McLaughlin, was questioning anybody at the scene, correct?
Correct.
She's tasked with that responsibility, but you did not engage with her.
Correct.
Meaning, when I say engage with her, you weren't standing there with her.
No, I was in the back of the ambulance.
Okay. You claim to have heard this statement, I hit him,
Yes.
several times from the woman with blood on her face.
Correct.
You indicated that she was erratic,
Correct.
hysterical.
Correct.
You said, for lack of a better term, running around in circles.
Yes.
She seemed despondent or distraught,
Very distraught.
very upset.
Yes.
Was she saying anything else that you recall?
To me, I heard I hit him, and then I went back, obviously continuing on patient care, focusing on patient care.
Did you hear her say, could I have hit him?
I heard I hit him.
That's what you believe at this point.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
He's
Where
sticking to his
exactly were
answer.
you?
I was crouched at the head of Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay. You were asked that exact question at the grand jury, correct? To describe where you were and who was doing what.
To my knowledge, yes.
You were asked a question when you spoke to her and she said, I hit him. Were you with the other representatives, sir, there at the time? Were there other people around you? You remember being asked that question by a grand juror?
I don't recall.
Do you remember answering, no, there were other people around me. I had paramedic Flamati with me. I believe firefighter Kelly was there as well.
Correct. So the three of us were all providing patient care
Okay.
around Mr. O'Keefe.
And you indicated that we were all there together. You were kneeling and you were doing the airway while you called him Tony.
Yes, that's Anthony Tony. Yes.
All right. He was doing the CPR, correct?
Correct.
And it's absolutely clear in your mind that when that statement was made, you were knelt down over Mr. O'Keefe. Flamati was doing CPR. Kelly was with you guys, and you posed the question to her, do you know him? Correct?
Correct.
Great. So I want to make sure I understand this. You said, as you're knelt down, do you know him? Directly to the female. And she answered your question with, I hit him.
Yes.
But that's not what you told Trooper Proctor in a February 8th interview.
I don't recall what I told Trooper Proctor.
Let's start at the beginning. Do
Okay.
you remember having a conversation with Trooper Proctor on February 8th?
I do.
That was obviously much closer in time than your grand jury testimony, correct?
Correct.
And years closer in time than your testimony now.
Correct.
This is a hugely crucial point for the defense. This guy is probably one of the most damaging witnesses to the defense because he's not part of that police conspiracy. He's presenting very well on the stand. He's just a responding paramedic trying to save somebody's life. He really doesn't have a dog in the fight in this entire thing. And he is the one who says, I heard her say, I hit him. And he's saying now that he heard it clearly. He's saying now that, yes, there was a lot of chaos and everything going on, but I had actually asked her a question and she was responding to my question. So I was paying attention to her when she gave that answer. How the defense handles this could have a huge impact on this case. Let's see how this plays out.
Do you recall on February 8th telling Trooper Proctor that while you were rendering aid, you heard Karen say, I hit him, to another female on the scene?
To another female, as I stated, I heard several times I hit him. In terms of who that was directed towards, I mean, again, focused on patient care.
Understood. My question was a little bit different. Do you recall telling Trooper Proctor specifically that while you were rendering aid, you heard Karen say, I hit him, to another female on the scene, and the other female told Karen to be quiet?
I do recall that.
Okay.
Oh, geez. That's
That's not what you testified to today.
bad
though.
for the defense.
Matter of fact, that story has changed to you posed a question
Mhm.
and she answered your question, correct?
Correct.
So which is it?
So when ventilating a patient, typically that is also used to gather information from bystanders, because as I'm ventilating, I can real quick look around. Do you know this individual? Do you know anything about this individual? That's fairly typical for any scenario in this. It's a very quick information gathering strategy.
But you'll agree that your testimony today has changed from what it was from your statement to Trooper Proctor on February 8th.
I don't know if it would so much say change, sir. To be honest, I don't fully recall that meeting with Mr. Proctor.
So, you know,
He's handling this well. This kid, he's probably older than he looks, but he's handling this really well. He's not getting frazzled. He's not allowing himself to get tripped up or make admissions. He's saying, you know, he's kind of sticking to his guns and really, more than anything, sounding impartial.
I remember meeting with him. However, I don't fully remember what was discussed.
so it's fair to say that your memory is a little bit faulty as it pertains to that time frame.
Absolutely.
When you went to the hospital with the patient, did you ever inform any of the doctors or nurses or medical professionals at the hospital that you had heard a female claim to have hit John O'Keefe, and that's the reason for his injuries?
I did not give the report to the hospital.
So the answer to that is no.
No.
You did not. As a first responder and a medical professional yourself, obviously you know that the cause and manner of the victim's injuries are incredibly important as it pertains to assessing how to treat that patient.
Correct.
Once you got back to the station and could take a breath, did you write any report?
I did not. No, I did not write the patient care report.
So you didn't write a report, just to finish my question, you didn't write a report that said, by the way, while I was out at the scene, I heard a female say, I hit him, and that's the cause and manner of the injuries.
Not to my knowledge.
Well, you would know if you wrote a report that said that,
Correct.
and you did not.
I did not write the patient care report.
At any time that day or any day subsequent thereto, did you contact the Canton Police Department, which were the first responders?
I did not.
So let me finish my question. And say, by the way, just so you know, I heard this woman say, I hit him out of the scene.
I did not.
Did you ever, on that day or any day subsequent thereto, contact the Massachusetts State Police and say, I heard this person say I hit him?
I did not.
So the first time you ever repeated that statement was on February 8th with Trooper Proctor.
Correct.
And by the time we've come full circle to today, that statement has now pivoted.
In terms,
You didn't you didn't overhear the person say it to a female. Now she's talking directly to you now.
she spoke directly to me, yes.
Have you, just one last point. You've obviously noted that this case has gotten an enormous amount of notoriety, correct?
Correct.
How many times would you say that you have discussed this case and this incident with your fellow firefighters?
It's brought up around the station semi-frequently. However, being involved in it, we try to stay clear of it just because we are involved in it.
So the answer is, there have been many discussions,
Yes,
probably daily.
frequently.
Have any of those discussions helped you with what you earlier described as a little bit of a faulty memory around that time frame?
Objection, Your Honor.
You can have that. Have they?
Repeat the question for me, sir.
Sure. Have any of those discussions helped you with what you earlier described as a little bit of a faulty memory?
The memories that I have and the ones that I'm bringing up, I don't believe that they've changed. You know, I played them over in my head to the best of my ability, and I don't believe my story is swayed. If they've been enunciated incorrectly on my part, it wasn't intentional.
Understood. And,
Yeah.
and nobody's casting aspersions. Yeah. Memory's a funny thing. So your memory is as good about that as it is about that winter coat.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Mr. Lally?
I thought that guy did good. I thought he held up well. You know, he did about as good as he could, and I'll be honest with you. I actually think that he was probably the most damaging to the defense so far, and that's actually not that horrible for the defense because I think they were able to kind of create this idea of, you know, did he Was he distracted? Who was she talking to? Has his testimony changed a little bit? But to be honest, the kid stuck to his guns. He was objective, honest, looks like he's trustworthy and veracity and everything else that you want out of a good witness. No dog in the fight, just trying to answer the questions as best that he could. And the best that they're coming back with on cross, and this is not a critique of their skills, it's just you're dealing with the evidence that you have in front of you. The best that they have is, well, it's changed a little bit, hasn't it? You told it somebody that you said it, she said it to you, but now you're saying that she said it to somebody else or vice versa, whatever it was, how it played out. At the end of the day, they can't change the idea that he is now clearly saying that she said, I hit him. I hit him. And that's the most damaging part of this, and a hugely damaging part of the case to the defense. Now, my question for you is, and again, this comes down to the defense strategy that has been chosen. From the prosecution's perspective, just her merely hitting him does not murder prove. If she is now saying, and they can explain that she has put the pieces together, that she's the one that caused this afterwards, after she finds his body, but had no intention of hitting him at that time, didn't realize that she had hit him at that time, and certainly didn't leave him in the snow to die. But she's now later on coming back, and in her head, she's putting it together of, I hit him. Oh my God, I'm distraught. I'm crying. I've got blood all over me. How does that make murder? And that's what's funny to me, is that the defense, maybe they'll go with that too, and maybe they'll throw that in, and maybe that's the way that they handle this. But they seem to be going with the idea that she never said that. She never talked about hitting him. She was only asking questions, and this man was killed inside of that home. So it's off to a incredible start. This, as I say, with any defense case, is always a death by 1,000 cuts, and they're scoring little points here and there and making those little points seem like big points. When you add those all together and you present them to a jury in closing arguments, you've built for yourself, hopefully, some reasonable doubt. I think it's a good start for the defense so far. This is probably the toughest witness that they've had, but those first two officers, I think they did a remarkable job with. We will be talking about this case much more. It's going to be going on for 6 to 8 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on any longer. We will be covering it as much as we can on live reactions like this on Courtroom Confidential, and we will also be covering it in our Friday regular show. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Please let me know the questions and comments that you have. I always love and appreciate hearing all of your feedback. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor, former partner of Alan Jackson's, currently a criminal defense attorney, and I've enjoyed this time that we've had together. Thank you so much for joining me at Courtroom Confidential.